Due to the constant movement of molecules, particles tend to spread out into the available space around them in a process called diffusion. When diffusion occurs across a membrane, it does it in order to achieve an equilibrium. If one side of the membrane has a higher concentration of a substance, it will want to spread out into the space available on the other side of the membrane. This will result in an overall net diffusion across the membrane, from a high concentration to a low concentration, or in other words, along its concentration gradient. This net diffusion will continue to occur until the concentrations are balanced on each side of the membrane, having reached an equilibrium. Since molecules are always moving, diffusion will still occur after reaching this point. However, there will be no net diffusion. Osmosis is just the diffusion of water across a membrane and has many observable applications, as with cells in the body. If you want to learn about an example of osmosis and diffusion in solutions with varying molarities of sucrose, check out this link to a lab written on the subject. Now back to how osmosis and diffusion relate to the human brain. In my last video, I assumed the listener had a basic understanding of these principles, but let's take this opportunity to dive in deeper. Embedded in the membrane of the neurons, proteins allow for facilitated diffusion. In the membrane, there are more potassium channels than sodium channels. These channels allow for the flow of potassium and sodium ions across the membrane. This is crucial in order to establish the resting potential of a neuron, as well as the entire process of triggering an action potential. These channels are non-voltage gated, meaning they are always open, allow sodium and potassium to flow through them along their concentration gradients, diffusing from the side of higher concentration to the side of lower concentration. As I talked about in the previous video, there are also sodium-potassium pumps. These pumps use energy in the form of ATP to move the sodium and potassium against their separate concentration gradients. The last type of channels in the membrane are voltage-gated sodium and potassium channels. These channels are similar to the non-voltage-gated ones, except they are closed and opened depending on the actions of the cell. Now that you've learned about how osmosis and diffusion occur in the brain, check out the next video to learn about the body's nervous system.